Hey guys, welcome back to my Uncanny channel. There's so many more of you now than there was 2 weeks ago when I last posted, and I'm so excited to have you guys here, and I'm excited to be back. I'm sorry that I missed 2 weeks in a row of posting. I was doing some other creative endeavors, and I just didn't have the time or the opportunity to work on the videos. On Labor Day weekend, I wrote a novel in 3 days for the 3-day novel contest, which is this international novel writing contest, kind of like NaNoWriMo, except it's in 3 days, so most of them end up being novellas, like mine was 90 pages, what's up? But I did it, and I'm really happy that I did. I love being creative, and writing is my big passion. So that was the first week that I missed. The second week was, I just had some personal things, nothing bad, just a lot was going on in my personal life, and I wasn't able to film even though I had this one written. So I'm going out of town all next week for work, so hopefully I can get one filmed and edited and posted for you guys, but if not, I might miss next week. But after that, posting schedule is back to normal. Every Friday you'll have a video. I wish I could make this my full-time job, but it's not. So I do my best. I really do, and I hope you guys can see that. So anyway, welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about the disappearance of Frederick Valentich. Today is going to be all about planes, Australia, UFOs. Frederick Valentich was an Australian pilot who disappeared during a 125-mile flight over the Bass Strait? I looked it up, but it still wasn't clear, so if you're Australian and listening, correct me. Bass or Bass? Let me know. Over the Strait on October 21st, 1978. He was flying a Cessna 128L light aircraft. It doesn't mean anything to me, but you guys love the details, so there it is. And if you are into airplanes, maybe it means something to you, so now you have it. When he disappeared, Valentich had about 150 flying hours under his belt and was authorized to fly at night during certain meteorological conditions. But from what I read about him, he didn't really seem like a skilled pilot or even a good pilot. He applied to the Australian Royal Air Force twice, but was rejected because he didn't have enough educational background. Happens. Although he was studying to be a commercial pilot, he had already failed all 5 subjects of the commercial license exam twice and was in the process of failing them all a third time at the time he disappeared. He also received a warning for flying into a restricted zone, and when he disappeared, he was under threat of being prosecuted for blindly flying into a cloud twice. I don't really know anything about piloting. I dated a guy who was trying to become a pilot for a little while, but he didn't obviously teach me anything about piloting, so I feel like planes go through clouds a lot, but maybe there's something very specific about the terminology here that I'm missing, but he was under prosecution for that. So if you know about flying and you're like, oh god, that's pretty bad, also let me know so I can educate myself about it. As far as his interests outside of flying, he was a big UFO enthusiologist. Wow. He was a big UFO enthusiast and often talked to his friends and family about what he thought might happen if there was an alien attack. I don't like to read off my tablet when I talk to you guys, but I need to read this one off the tablet because there's a lot in this sentence to remember, and I know it's going to take me forever unless I read it to you. On October 21st, 1978, Valentich filed a flight plan to fly from Moorabbin Airport in Melbourne to King Island in the Bass Strait via Cape Otway, and then return to the Moorabbin Airport. When he filed his flight plan, he said the reason for the trip was to pick up passengers on King Island and then bring them back. But when they interviewed his girlfriend after the disappearance, she said that he went to go pick up crawfish. And neither of these things are true because the investigation revealed that there were A, no passengers waiting on King Island, and B, no order for crawfish had ever been placed to be picked up that day by him. So we don't know why he was making this trip in the first place. So on this flight, for an unknown reason, around 7 p.m., Valentich sees another aircraft kind of hanging around in the sky around his plane. He's like, this is probably a problem. And he contacted the Melbourne Air Flight Service, which it sounds to me like is like an air traffic control type of organization, and spoke to controller Steve Roby. Apparently there's no publicly available audio for this transmission, but Allegedly, it was broadcast at some point on a local radio station. There's also a transcript of the audio, which I will read to you guys now. I didn't change anything except his call sign, or I guess that's the word for it, call sign ID was Delta Sierra Juliet. And almost every sentence in this transcript starts with Delta Sierra Juliet. And it's just really distracting from the overall conversation, and it doesn't really take anything away to not say it. So I'm just leaving that part out for like the conciseness and clarity of what's going on in the transcript. And I'll put it up for you guys here. Melbourne, this is Delta Sierra Juliet. Is there any known traffic below 5,000? Delta Sierra Juliet, no known traffic. Seems to be a large aircraft below 5,000. What type of aircraft is it? I cannot affirm. It is for bright and it seems to me like landing lights. Melbourne, this is Delta Sierra Juliet. The aircraft has just passed over me at least 1,000 feet above. Roger, and it is a large aircraft confirmed? Unknown. Due to the speed it's traveling, is there any Air Force aircraft in the vicinity? No known aircraft in the vicinity. Melbourne, it's approaching now from due east towards me. It seems to me that he's playing some sort of game. He's flying over me 2-3 times at speeds I could not identify. Roger, what is your actual level? My level is 4,500, 4500. And you confirm you cannot identify the aircraft. Affirmative. Roger, stand by. Melbourne, it's not an aircraft, it's... Delta Sierra Juliet, can you describe the craft? As it's flying past, it's a long shape. Cannot identify more than it has such speed. It's before me right now, Melbourne. Roger, and how large would the object be? Melbourne, it seems like it's chasing me. What I'm doing now is orbiting, and the thing is just orbiting on top of me also. It's got a green light and it's sort of metallic-like. It's all shiny on the outside. It's just vanished. Melbourne, would you know what kind of aircraft I've got? Is it a military aircraft? Confirm the aircraft just vanished. Say again. Delta Sierra Juliet, is the aircraft still with you? It's now approaching from the southwest. The engine is rough idling. I've got it set at 23-24 and the thing is... Roger, what are your intentions? My intentions are to go to King Island, Melbourne. That strange aircraft is hovering on top of me again. It's hovering and it's not an aircraft. After Valentich says it's not an aircraft, there's some silence and then the sound of scraping metal. And that's the last time that anyone heard from Frederick Valentich. A 4-day air and sea search ensued that included not only government aircraft, but also 8 civilian aircraft and outgoing ship traffic. Although nothing was officially ever found of Valentich or his plane, there were a few leads that came out in the following days and years that seemed promising. One was an oil slick on the surface of the water in the area that could have come from his plane had it crashed and then leaked gasoline, but it was investigated and found that it wasn't related to Valentich's plane. There were also several civilian reports of small planes landing and taking off in the area, but none of those ended up being Valentich either. 5 years after Valentich's disappearance, an engine cowl flap from a Cessna 182 washed up on the shore of Flinders Island, which is an island in the Bass Strait. When investigators tried to track down if it was related to his plane or not, Valentich's plane did fall within the serial numbers that would have received that particular part, but there was no way to conclusively say whether or not it came from his plane or another plane of the same model in that serial number series. When government investigations finally wrapped up several years after his disappearance, they concluded that Valentich's disappearance was likely presumed fatal. So, theories on what happened to Frederick Valentich. Theory 1. He staged his own death. Evidence to support this theory include the fact that his plane allegedly didn't show up on the radar either during his flight path or during the transmission where he was reporting the extra craft. Also, all the reasons he gave for his flight plan ended up being fake. So maybe it's because he had no intention of taking that journey in the first place and just wanted to have it on record that he had made the trip. Also, one of the reports from civilians included the fact that a small plane landed discreetly in the area, which might suggest that he was landing there to sneak off and have his new life. But then there was no report of ever finding an abandoned plane anywhere, and I just don't, with everyone looking for a person who has just disappeared on a flight, you would think that a randomly abandoned plane in the middle of nowhere would be a pretty big ping on the radar. So, staged his death, first theory. Second theory is that he was flying inverted accidentally, and the plane that he saw was a reflection of his own plane in the water above his head, and that he eventually crashed into the water. Which is not bad, except the government ruled that one out because allegedly the type of plane that he was flying can't fly inverted for that long, especially not the amount of time that it would take for him to have this whole transmission with the air traffic controller. So that's kind of like a already pre-debunked theory by the time I'm telling it to you now. Theory 3 is that it was suicide. There's not a whole lot to support this theory outside of his personal struggles between failing all the exams, being rejected from the Air Force, and being in the process of failing for a third time, which is probably pretty discouraging. According to his family and friends, however, aside from his struggles with getting his license, there wasn't a whole lot of he didn't seem to have a lot of other personal issues. He didn't exhibit any kind of signs of depression or a depressive mood, and was overall a happy, albeit paranoid about UFOs person. And I know that people are always going through things that no one knows but them, but if we're going off what we know is that he struggled with his license, but otherwise was a happy person and did not appear suicidal to people in his life. Also, his final correspondence didn't seem to communicate any kind of emotional struggle or an emotional state in which he would be taking his own life, nor did he seem to be focused on anything other than this craft that he was seeing. So that kind of makes me question too if suicide is really a good theory for this one, or if it's just kind of everyone picks that when someone disappears mysteriously. The third theory is that he experienced a tilted horizon, which I had to look up because I wasn't actually sure what this was. And what it is an optical illusion that pilots experience where the horizon appears tilted instead of flat. And so they adjust the plane to match the horizon, keep the plane level. But what actually is happening is that they are now tilted. And as the altimeter shows that they're descending, pilots will pull up to keep the plane up, and it tightens the radius of the turn, and it creates a spiral where the outcome is either the pilot realizes what's going on and corrects it, or the plane crashes. If you're someone like Valentich, who has not a great record for being an awesome pilot and is still pretty green as far as piloting experience goes, you may not realize it until it's too late. The way people who ascribe to this theory explain the lights in the extra craft is that it's Mars, Venus, and whatever other planets are visible at the time just being bright that night, as sometimes they are, and he was mistaking that for another craft. Planets in the sky planets in the night sky just do not look like an alien craft sitting right next to your plane. I think any person who's ever been outside will be able to tell if it's a planet in the sky or a craft right next to them. So for this theory, tilted horizon, yeah, approved. That makes total sense. The planets in the sky, no, sorry. Now we've gotten all of the non-UFO theories out of the way, let's get into the reason that everyone is here, which is the UFO theories. The first UFO theory is one that I only found on one or two sources, if that. It might have just even been one source. But is a theory by a guy named Brian Denning, whose theory is that Valentich got disoriented while calling the control tower, trying to recreate the opening scene of Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Wait. I know you're all like, no, but hear it out because it's actually not bad. He has a whole long article that he wrote about the similarities between what Valentich said on the transmission and the lines and details that are in the opening scene of Close Encounters of the Third Kind that is pretty interesting, but also kind of long, so I will link it down below and you can read the whole thing. I'm not going to read it to you verbatim because that would be really boring. So it's things like calling a control tower and talking about there's another craft I can see here and I can't really make it out, but it's really brightly lit and it looks like it's like burning or like running lights, and about like, do you see another craft in the air? And like, no, there's not another craft, and so on and so forth. There's a lot of similarities. And the part where the crash comes in is that while he's speaking with the control tower, he happens to get disoriented because he's distracted with his own like storytelling and everything, and ends up just crashing the plane into the water or losing control of the plane, or whatever, what have you. I don't think it's the most logical theory, but I really like it, especially because there are a lot of similarities, and I think it's really cool that someone noticed that, because Close Encounters of the Third Kind came out the year before Valentich disappeared, so it would be a very recent, popular movie that a lot of people know, and especially people who are UFO enthusiasts would have gone to see and would know really well and like be really into. So if he's already a UFO enthusiast and he's a pilot, and he's like known to make bad decisions while piloting. So it kind of makes sense to me that this might be one of those bad decisions where he's like, I'm gonna do this thing, it's gonna be really like cool and funny or whatever, or fun, or whatever he thinks it's gonna be, and it ends up getting him killed. I think it's a decent theory. I think it's at least better to me than like that he was inverted for forever and then just crashed finally theory. So I'm with you, Brian Denning. I think it's a decent theory, and I liked your article. Alright, the theory that we have all been waiting for. The theory is that Valentich's plane was either destroyed or abducted by a UFO. Obviously, one of the main pieces of evidence supporting this theory is that after Valentich's disappearance became known to the public, a lot of people started reporting that they had seen some kind of activity in the sky that night. Most people describe it as a moving green light in the sky, and one person even reported seeing a green light following Valentich's plane. One of the major reasons that ufologists claim that these witness accounts are factual is that they report the green light even though Valentich's statements weren't released to the public until 4 or 5 years after he disappeared. So the only way that anyone could have known about the green light is either by chance, which they say is very unlikely considering the number of people who saw it and described it as specifically a green light, or they actually saw a green light possibly chasing a plane through the night sky outside of Melbourne. So, a group out of Phoenix, Arizona called Ground Saucer Watch claims that a plumber named Roy Manifold captured a photo on the evening in question that he believes shows a fast-moving object exiting the water near Cape Otway Lighthouse. UFO enthusiast groups say that even though it's hard to make out what is being seen in the photo, it is a bona fide, unidentified flying object. Which is true. It is a flying object that is not identified. But I also am not, I'm just looking at it and I'm not sold on it being a spacecraft, So nothing really happens with this story UFO-wise for years, decades, until 2014 when a group out of Victoria called UFO Action finds a farmer who saw the whole thing. The farmer reported seeing a 30-meter wide aircraft floating above his farm, and stuck to the side of the aircraft was Valentich's Cessna 182L. Apparently this guy even scratched the plane's registration number onto the side of his tractor so he would remember it, and then didn't say anything for 30 years because his friends made him feel dumb about it. So it seems like case closed, but unfortunately the group has no idea what the man's name is, or where to find him, or if he's even still alive. So if you're a farmer who saw this and you're watching this video, come forward and tell us about it so we can solve this case, I guess. But those are all the theories. Which one do you like the best? I obviously made it clear which ones I don't agree with. Whether you believe that aliens are visiting us or not, we're definitely not the only planet that's ever held life or that probably currently holds life. Every UFO story, I think, needs to be taken with a ton of salt and not just a grain. But it's not impossible. Leave me a comment down below and let me know which of these theories that you think is the most logical answer, or if you have another theory that you want to share. I would love to hear that. I always love to hear people's theories that are not ones that I cover in the video, because people bring forward these, like, you know, totally off the wall things that sound so interesting and make total sense, like, when you think about it, and I love hearing what you guys come up with. So please share that with me. Go on and subscribe to me if you haven't already. If you like this video and you want to hear more odd, creepy, unexplained stories, I will provide you with them. So subscribe below, ding the bell so that you get a notification when I post. If you liked this video and you want me to do more UFO stuff, obviously I'm down for it because I'm super into it. Like this video so I know you want to see this kind of content, and above all else, remember that it is a wonderful thing to believe in the unbelievable, and you should do it. Bye guys.